For 40 years, my wife Eleanor and I built a life in this house. We raised our son here. We planted that oak tree in the front yard when he turned 5. This wasn't just a plot of land, it was our sanctuary. Our little piece of the world, filled with memories and love. After Ellie passed 2 years ago, the quiet became louder. But the house, the garden, my routine, they kept me grounded. They were my connection to her. And then, the new HOA board arrived. Brenda, the new president, started a campaign she called Neighborhood Beautification. It started small. A notice about my grass being a 1/4 inch too long. Another about a single loose shingle on the roof. I fixed them. I wasn't looking for trouble. Then, they came for my car. My 1998 Volvo. It was old, yes. But it was pristine. I kept it washed and waxed. It never leaked a drop of oil on my clean driveway. That car held so many memories. It was the car we brought our baby boy, Michael, home from the hospital in. It was the car we drove on countless family vacations. For me, it was a piece of history. A piece of Ellie. The first notice called it an unregistered nuisance vehicle. I went down to the HOA office immediately. I showed Brenda my current registration and insurance. She smiled a thin, cold smile. "Arthur," she said, "it's not about the paperwork. It's about aesthetics. It's an eyesore. It lowers property values. You have a week to remove it." I was stunned. Remove it? It's my car. It's in my driveway. It's perfectly legal. "The rules give us broad discretion," she said, her smile never fading. A week, Arthur. A week later, a second notice arrived. This one was a fine. $250. I refused to pay it. That's when the letters turned into threats. Threats of liens against my house. Threats of legal action. I tried to reason. I went to a community meeting. I stood up, my voice shaking a little, and I asked for common sense. I told them what that car meant to me. Some neighbors looked down at their hands, ashamed. But Brenda just tapped her gavel. "Sentiment doesn't change the rules, Arthur. This is a community of standards." The final straw was a certified letter. It stated that if the derelict vehicle was not removed within 48 hours, the HOA had contracted with a towing company to remove it at my expense. I sat at my kitchen table, Ellie's favorite vase in the center, and I read that letter over and over. The anger I'd felt turned into something else. Something cold and clear and determined. I wasn't going to yell anymore. I was going to think. I remembered something. Years ago, when I was on the board myself, we looked into getting a new community welcome sign. The old one had been donated by a local company. Brenda, who was just a member then, had pushed hard to use a company owned by her brother-in-law. It was approved quickly. I never thought much about it. Now, I wondered. I spent a whole day down at the county courthouse, looking at public records. Business licenses. Contract filings. And I found it. The HOA's official management company, the one that handled all our funds, fines, and contracts, including the towing contract, was owned by Brenda's husband. And the towing company they had just hired? Owned by Brenda's brother-in-law. It was a perfect little circle. They were fining residents and then paying themselves to enforce the fines. They weren't enforcing rules. They were running a scam. I made copies of everything. I organized it all neatly in a folder. But I didn't take it to the HOA. I didn't even take it to the other board members. The next morning, at 8 a.m., a large tow truck rumbled onto my street. It stopped in front of my house. Two men got out. One walked up to my door and rang the bell. "Here to impound the Volvo," he said, holding up a work order from the HOA. My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice steady. "I'd like to see your authorization and your license to operate, please." He sighed, annoyed, but showed me his paperwork. It all listed the HOA as the client. Just as I expected. As he walked back to his truck to hook up my car, I made a single phone call. Not to 911. I called the non-emergency line for the police department. I asked to speak to an officer about a possible case of fraud and corrupt practices involving a homeowners association. Then I waited on my porch. The tow truck driver had just finished attaching the hooks to my Volvo when a police cruiser arrived. An older, seasoned officer got out. Brenda, who must have been watching from down the street, hurried over, smiling her official smile. "Officer, thank goodness," she said. "We're just dealing with a chronic violator. He's refusing to comply with our legal covenants." The officer looked at her, then at me, then at the tow truck hooked to my perfectly legal car. I didn't say a word. I simply walked over and handed him the folder. He opened it and started to read. His expression changed. He looked at the tow truck, then at Brenda's brother-in-law's company name on the side. He looked back at the documents showing the ownership of the management company. The pieces fit together perfectly. He looked at Brenda. "Ma'am, is this your husband's company?" he asked, his voice low and serious. Brenda's smile vanished. Her face went pale. "Well, that's not relevant." "The violation is, it's very relevant," the officer said. "This looks an awful lot like a conflict of interest. Possibly fraud." Then he did something I will never forget. He turned to the tow truck driver. "Sir, unhook that car immediately. It's on private property and legally registered." Then he turned back to Brenda. "Now, ma'am, about this vehicle." He pointed to Brenda's own car, a shiny new SUV parked illegally on the curb, blocking a fire hydrant, a violation she herself had written dozens of fines for. "Is that yours?" Brenda stammered. "Well, yes, but I was just..." The officer held up his hand. He radioed to dispatch. "Send a city tow truck to my location. We have an illegally parked vehicle obstructing a fire hydrant. Ready for immediate impound." The look on Brenda's face was worth every second of anguish she had put me through. It was a mixture of sheer panic, utter humiliation, and dawning horror. She had to stand there, in front of the whole neighborhood that had begun to gather, and watch as a city tow truck hooked up her own expensive car and drove it away. The investigation that followed was long. Brenda and her husband were removed from the HOA board. They had to repay thousands of dollars in misused funds. The fines against me, and against many others, were dropped. My Volvo still sits in my driveway. Every time I look at it, I don't just see the memories of my Ellie. I see a reminder that sometimes, the quietest fight is the strongest. You don't have to shout to be heard. You just have to be right, and you have to be smart. Standing up for your home isn't just about protecting a building. It's about protecting your dignity, your history, and your justice. And no one, no matter how much power they think they have, can ever take that from you. If you've ever felt pushed around by someone who thinks they make the rules, share this story. Because sometimes, the best revenge is simply the truth.